Mama! It's Godzilla!
Such an imagination, Yukio. What would Gojira be doing in Japan?
Are you serious right now, bro?
Hey guys, it's the Pink King here, and yes, what you just saw did actually happen. Now, you probably had one of two reactions to that clip. Either, what the hell was that, or where have I seen this before? Well, this, peeps, is where I ask you the question. Do you remember Godzilla the series?
What? What's wrong with it?
Nothing. If you're a mango.
I'm orange! How did I get orange?
Yeah, Godzilla the series. First airing in 1998 and concluding in 2002, this cartoon has got to be one of the strangest and most insane tie-in series I've ever seen, with this cartoon being a sequel to the infamous 1998 Emmerich movie, with it bringing back some of the same characters, introducing new characters. The plot was very simple. Nick and his team called Heat are a group of scientists and a French agent who are brought together to team up with a new Godzilla that was born after the first one died and imprinted onto Nick, with the gang having to go around the world to stop all these new kaiju threats emerging. So basically the kaiju equivalent of Scooby-Doo. This cartoon at the time started off really well and gradually built up as it went into its second season. However, it was inevitably cancelled due to the poor performance of the movie, resulting in this cartoon never being finished. But over the years, this show has begun to get its own sort of cult following, with people looking back over this show with either fond memories or not sure what to make of it. So today I want to see why exactly this cartoon has left a lot of people scratching their heads, and whether or not it was any good to begin with. But first, I need to talk about my experiences with this show. I grew up in the late 2000s, so this show was no longer running, but I did see this series as a kid through YouTube. As a child, I was a big Godzilla fan, so seeing there was a cartoon series about it really got me pumped up, and it definitely lived up to my young expectations at the time, with myself coming back to this show once every few years. And I imagine a few of you also viewed the show just like this, as this show mainly has been preserved through the internet. Something that not a lot of other tie-in cartoon shows have had the luxury of happening to them. And for a tie-in show, this cartoon really went above and beyond in what the movie did. With this cartoon going back towards the more goofier side of Godzilla, with it coming off as a hybrid between the Showa era and the 98 movie, which on paper is a weird combination, but in execution was surprisingly top-notch. And speaking of execution, let's talk about whether or not this show was any good. Now, having to do research for this series, I ended up rewatching it all for this video, and the quality was actually surprisingly very good. Don't get me wrong, this cartoon won't win any awards, but for something that was made to essentially be nothing more than a marketing ploy for a movie, they went far beyond what they needed to. Let's start off with the characters. All of these characters aren't really that well developed, with most of the development coming far and few between. However, it strangely works, as these characters are mainly there to have good dynamics rather than interesting ideas. And they do a good job at that, with my personal favourite being Mendel, as he's such a tropey, wimpy, smart guy. It's so different to everyone else, but it's fantastic. He's funny with his dynamic with his robot Nigel as well. Like, they're just so memorable. And that's what these characters are. They're memorable. They really stick with you enough so you want to root for them. They are also very 90s. with this show often feeling like a time capsule, if you will. It's so outdated, but that strangely gives this show a weird charm to it that adds to the Saturday morning cartoon feel. You can only really understand what I'm talking about if you've seen the series. But what about the thing we're all here to see the series for? The kaiju. Well, from out the gate, this series knows exactly what it is and has fun with it. The amount of unique kaiju they have here is really quite remarkable, with almost all of them feeling genuinely creative and really well fleshed out, with the series occasionally switching up the approach, as sometimes instead of Godzilla saving the city every episode, there will be episodes where he needs to be saved himself, or Godzilla will go against humans alongside with him switching up some really outside the box ideas with him. Hell, this series uses literal aliens. Yeah, aliens. This series couldn't care less about being grounded, and it's all the better for that. But what about the G-Man himself? Well, Godzilla in this show is actually far more interesting than he needs to be, as Godzilla here is far more fleshed out, with him using his brain a lot, especially when fighting. He doesn't always just blast through opponents, he sometimes uses his brain, he digs, he strategizes, and he doesn't always win his own fights. He even has his own little cave, and even becomes a stepdad at one point. I'm not joking. This show actually proved my points in a previous video that Godzilla can be fleshed out if you take the right approach to him. I wish the Monsterverse, as an example, used this show as a blueprint sometimes, because despite this show having less than half the resources of the Monsterverse, it's able to make this world feel much more lived in and large, with several unique kaiju that aren't just blank sheets but have genuine character to them, and a lot of stuff that makes them interesting and unique. As an example, they made Godzilla here a much more animalistic creature, showing Godzilla less as a destructive force of nature, but rather an instinctive animal. And for this show, it works very well, as he's able to be quite expressive and full of life that really makes the viewer care for Godzilla and get really interested in him, which was really complemented by this show's animation. Now, it's not perfect. There's a lot of times where the frame rates are inconsistent, and sometimes its style switches up a lot with certain scenes, but like with stuff being far less detailed. But seeing this show was made a lot quicker than most other shows in order to tie in with the movie, it's definitely excusable here. But despite all the good in this show, there are still some problems here, with stuff like the voice acting being very strange at times, as well as the shows need to pointlessly add subplots that simply aren't interesting. And arguably the biggest issue with this series is its ending, or lack thereof. You see, this cartoon never got a conclusive ending, and the final episode was just another run-of-the-mill episode. So if you're trying to get invested in the story, it sucks that there's no satisfying way to end it. But why is there no ending? Well, in order to answer that, we need to go over why the show got cancelled in the first place. Despite how well this cartoon was doing, it ultimately was dependent on the success of the '98 movie, as not only was that movie bringing in most of the money to fund this cartoon, but also the license. I don't need to tell you that Toho, Godzilla's parent company, are extremely strict with their rules and licenses. And so when the Godzilla movie was so hated by everyone, especially Toho, they were in no rush to renew the license, and the same with TriStar, the people who made the movie. Originally there was going to be a sequel, however due to the backlash they decided to not continue forward with it. And so a lot of the ideas for the sequel were actually dumped into the series, and ultimately since TriStar let the license expire, this series was shortly cancelled after that. A very unfortunate end, especially considering just how good this show was. I won't act like it was groundbreaking, but it definitely went far beyond what it could have been. It could have played it a lot safer, stick to one formula, and just advertise toys in a movie, but there are legit great ideas in here, among the rest of what they did. This show wasn't perfect, but it definitely deserves to be remembered more. I, for one, will always remember this show and how it had everything going against it and still managed to pull off one of the best, if not the best, Godzilla animated series ever. Yes, even better than Singular Point and the Earth trilogy. Those are bad. But what do you guys think? Have you forgotten about this little gem, or has it managed to stick with you over the years? Let me know in the comments. I'm very interested to see what you guys have to say about this. Also, don't forget to subscribe. My goal is to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we are so close to doing that. So if you want more in-depth retrospectives like this, then subscribe and like the video. And with that, I will see you all next time.